Welcome, everyone. This is a request that Larissa made. What she asked me to do was to talk about how we acquire the TDA data, and I will do that. But before we do that, I thought it's useful to take a little step back and get clear about why we're doing this. So I think one of the, oh, it's going to the wrong screen. Hang on, I got to somehow fix this. Hang on. Uh, let's see. See if this works. Yep. So I think one of the best things about this whole thing is it's data-based, and I don't know anything else that really is. Uh, Probably there's nothing else that is because I'm a different animal than most people that do this work. And the first thing you do when you work with a team is ascertain that it's a team you should work with. And the criteria are it needs to have a willing leader. No matter what the team members say, if the leader doesn't want to do it, don't waste your time. Because if the team leader, we're social beings. The primary driver of social context is the hierarchical leader. If they don't think this is worth doing, nothing's going to ever come with this because there's too much other work to do. The other thing is people are going to want, when you start talking about charging them for this, they're going to want to combine teams to save those pennies. Don't let them do it. The reason is if you get a low score, people's nature is to blame the other team for it. So that's not going to work. So it's got to be a team around a leader, and it could be as few as 3 or 4 people. The rule of thumb is if it's less than 4 or less, you ask them, make sure, because the confidentiality is going to be pretty hard to conceal. Although the truth is people really break the confidentiality that they crave themselves by writing it in ways that people can recognize. So anyway, that's the first thing. I always think it's good to give everybody a copy of the book. It's not about selling books. I don't make enough on these to matter, but it's a really good reference manual. And if you don't do this, the whole process is gonna be less powerful. And the book's a good read. Most people read it and report. I've got several people who show up in the workshop with tabs all over the book, and I've got at least half a dozen people have read it 3 or 4 times. And the book has 5-star ratings on Amazon, so I think it's an easy read. Then you do this TDA and Team Development Accelerator. The biggest issue you've got here is that people are going to see it like an assessment, which is what we used to call it. They're going to think they're being tested. And you got to tell them the first thing is the results will only go to them, nobody else, no matter what. And it's for their learning benefit. This is going to generate action items for them to use. And here's the basic structure of it. There's an explanation of why each behavior is important. I did this just because I thought people needed to know. I think if you haven't done this work, it may not be intuitively obvious why appreciation matters, for example. And then the big question was how to measure a behavior against what's called normalization of deviance, where some deviant behavior becomes normalized. And that could be Challenger or the Republican Party, or pick your own source for this. So the answer is you measure against a standard. And it didn't occur to me at the time, but that's another major learning, because when you read the standard, you're learning what good looks like. So we've done an important learning process here. We give an explanation of what this is about, and people are probably curious to understand it because they're going to answer the questions. And then we've shown them in the standard what it looks like to do this well. So then they will score each behavior against these norms. And it's pretty simple stuff. I think I had a different numerical scale when I started, and then I stretched it out a little bit after a little bit of trial. So always is 100 points, and that's in academic terms as good as you can get. If you never meet it, it's 0 points. And so then the 2 intermediates are just the 2 intermediate points. I skipped 50 that's what I left out now to make it a little more sensitive. Then they get comments. So the report's really important. And so what I do is uh, have the team leader give the report, and at the end of the report, ask them when they will do their next thing, explain to them the importance of doing this over. And people are pretty amenable to this because they found out something useful to them. This is where I ask them, do they want to do a workshop or not? And they can do now I can do it in 2 days, or they can do it in modules. Then it generates behavior specific action items for them, and I'll show you that in a minute. And they should name a czar to help them retain focus on this. The problem is that, where attention goes, power flows. Someone's got to bring your attention back to this material, and it's easy to lose it in the workaday stress. And the report shows who completed it, who didn't, just for completeness. This is the static view, kind of showing intuitively the difference between a low benchmarking and a high benchmarking team. And I think anyone can look at this and say, where would you rather be? Where would you rather spend your life? What would be more productive? So I think it's a motivator. And many people are going to say it doesn't apply to me for this, that, and the other reason when they get a low score.
Charlie, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Can you go back to that last slide real quick? There was something there that I didn't catch right away. So you've got, this is one of the things that's kind of been rumbling around in my mind, is the test is anonymous, but then your captured email addresses.
Yeah, it's the person who processes this. I will know if I do the work here or you do the work, you'll know who said what. And you've got to be, presumably you're the facilitator do this whole thing. And you've got to have them trust you for the whole process. And so what you say is that you will never associate any person's comments or scores with them, although you will know it. They have to believe you're not going to share it.
Understood. Okay,
and the software we had before actually randomly sorted the comments, so you couldn't recognize a person on one comment and then see them on another. So, but the truth of the matter is that most people know who made the comment, even though they don't like to admit that, because they read it, and people are usually pretty consistent with what they say and what they write in these things. So when I've done this, I can read the comment, and I know who that is. I know who that is. It's rarely a surprise if you know the team.
But still, it's not broadly available. And part of how you do that is through the facilitator.
The individual association with an email is not available to anybody ever. And what I've told them is that none of the scoring. I'm going to talk about the team version. Individual version is essentially similar, but I'm not going to talk about it, but unless you have questions. The only difference is the team version measures behavioral norms. The individual version measures an individual's behaviors. But what I tell them is that management could call me up and say they'll cancel my contract if I don't share the scores, and I'll say no problem, cancel it. I will give the scores to the team leader. Period. The team leader can do with it as they want. If they don't want to share it with the team, then that's their choice. It's on them. I'm not the leader of this team. They are. No one's ever done that. But also, just to be clear, I tell them you got to present it exactly as it is. If you make any changes, like someone says the team leader's an asshole, okay, and you say I don't like that, I'm gonna delete that comment. If you do, the person who wrote it will see it's gone, and all credibility. So as I give the report to you, do not alter it in any form, period. Okay? But the association of the team data will never be exposed by me or anyone who works for me except to the team leader. And the individual association, I will never tell a team leader. In fact, I don't even have it. I don't even know it. In this process, you will know it, but then in the case of the software doing it, you don't even know it. So you've got to have them feel confident that you're not going to tattle on them somehow. And frankly, these are people that I'm not. I'm not in their workaday life. I have no motivation to do anything like that.
Right. And then you had the count of completed, not completed, and opted out.
Yeah.
How was that facilitated in the process? Is that a question in
No, it's just
TDA?
I know everybody with the old system. I knew everyone that was invited because it's on our software. So the software would automatically generate this report, and this is really to see whose opinion you're seeing in the aggregate. Uh, People like to know this, especially large teams. Who said these things, in the aggregate. So that's why it's there. I think you could leave it out if you want. Um, this was
Okay.
just in our journal software, it did this. But
Yep.
then there are people, if you chose not to do it, it asks you why. And people would say, I just joined the team last week. Uh, or I'm, I've been away on detail for 2 years. I don't know what's going on back there, or whatever your reason is. And so most people would fill that out. They don't have any problem saying, here's why I'm not doing it. And some people wouldn't do it just because they're. And so, by the way, in the process, in the old system, as it went along, I would send out report. The computer would make reports and send them out to the team leader and his administrative assistant and me, if I was running it, to say who completed and who didn't. And this is so they can go rattle the cage. So if there's an important person didn't do it, I'd ask the team leader to go call the person and say, go do this. I want you to do it. I wanted to make sure that the team leader got the reports that they wanted. If someone just refused, they just refused, but that wasn't often the case. It's usually people that, the biggest problem is that human resource organizations and companies, NASA included, sits down and sends out these 80-page things that I look at them, 80 question things, sorry, and I look at them and say it's a bunch of nonsense, like what's the morale at your center? I could tell you the morale at their center by what's going on there. And all the things that completed were only of use to top management. They were no use to the team. So the people complained about it, grudgingly did it. I want them to understand this is an activity for their benefit. This is not for anybody else. In fact, no one else will see the data. Although, let me just say this. When a team got a really good score, they often would say, go tell the management. And I would do that. In most of these things, when I'm working in an institution like a NASA Field Center, I would go talk with the management about this whole process before I started and ask their endorsement or their agreement to get them on board. So top management knows I'm doing this, and I would go in and maybe do a report for them once a quarter, about half-hour meeting, and just say what I had been doing there, who I've been working with. And I might say this team, they asked me to show you the data. They're outstanding, and you already knew that.
Gotcha. One final question. I appreciate all
Yeah,
the extra background here. I think I heard you say don't do smaller than four, or I guess
yeah.
maybe stall
If
smaller
you
than
if you
five.
or some number, I don't know, 4 or 3, I don't know, but the rule of thumb we had was if it's a small number, like 4 or less, get the team leader to talk to the people and say, look, we're gonna people worry about this anonymity and on the part of the tool, but then they break it themselves with how they write the comments. This
Yeah.
human nature not to recognize that. We say, with only 3 response. Oh, by the way, the other thing about that, we don't do a report with one response. Okay, you just say we don't do it because there's no anonymity. So you'd say, uh, are you okay doing this? Because with only 3 respondents, for example, it's not going to be easy to hide which is yours. And in every case that we did that, the people say, oh, sure, I don't care. I don't mind. Um, Most people don't mind if you approach them one-on-one agreeing to do it. But this is rare. I just thought we shouldn't. There are some very small teams where there are
Yeah.
cases where you got one supervisor and 3 or 4 employees, and just didn't want to lock them out of it.
Yeah.
It's
Is there a
interesting.
maximum number that you would
Yeah,
like
so
stop?
I got pressured by a vice president to do a whole organization of like 300 people, and I objected to it, but he insisted, and he's a long-time client. So it generated a 80-page report, and who could make any sense out of it? I mean, so I never did that again. He asked me to do it, pleaded with me. He wants to see his whole organization, and the thing went on for pages and pages and pages. So you couldn't brief it, you couldn't make any sense out of it. So I think if you stick with the one, the span of control in most business organizations, the U.S. Army figured out in World War II that 7 was the right number of people in a squad. And so most business organizations have between 6 and 20 people reporting to a single person. And rare to have any, I don't know. I mean, there was a big thing in the 80s about flattening out organizations, less supervisors. Some people try to do that. By the way, I should say there are things that aren't very team centric. I was thinking about your solar company, and maybe the installers don't have to work together much as a team. They're on the roof. They might work with 3 guys
Right.
one week and 3 different guys the next week.
Yep.
And, but trying to build a technical project or do engineering, it's very intensive in teamwork. Uh, like this solar power system I've got is pretty complex. So I'm guessing probably 5 or 6 electrical engineers work together on this, and they have to work closely or it doesn't work. I could also imagine an example, like for example, the police chief. Uh, the police go out, the ones that go on the beat, they go out in pairs, and that's the team that matters. And if the police chief has 80 policemen working for them, teamwork across that team is probably almost non-existent. So it's you got to look at the specifics of it, and the more integrated the product is, the more important this work is.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that useful? So this is just this team I picked at random, and I would say this is not unusual. You see this, there's a clearly, if you did a least squares fit, there's a clear upward trend. But like everything, that the social context has ebbs and flows. This might be they all got a bonus. This might be there's a rumor of a layoff. I don't know. So you look at the trend over time. And this is the really interesting data. The individual's responses, I've talked about this before. And for the people who are low, to go with the idea it's a social context issue and inquire what's bothering them. Both Frank and I have had big success as managers before I even did 4D work to a low performing person, go ask them what's going on. And in some cases, they didn't have the intellectual capacity for what I was asking them to do, which case I'd help them move on. In other cases, they might have been disserviced by somebody along the way and have a grudge against somebody else. Just surface it and fix it. And these are another thing that limits the accuracy is this is what a normal distribution looks like. The mathematical term average refers to a curve. A curve looks like this. These are not normal curves. They're skewed normals at best. And small number statistics. And I think you probably pick the lowest score, and they're all interrelated. So for example, if you keep your agreements better, you're going to be more effective at including people or appreciating them and everything else. So the lowest score probably has the highest leverage, and I'd just pick 1 or 2 to work on. And this is what a report looks like. Here's the description of the behavior, why it matters. Here's the standard, etc. And here's the comments. So I think I mentioned this, but I always would have when I discovered the central role of the team leader, I would have them brief the report. I'd brief the report to the team leader, they brief the report. And it informs action learning, which is really important. This means it's bringing up decisions and action items that you can make. And if it's a bottom quintile team, the 7 deadly sins are in play. And what that means is you can't work with this team. You got to stop and fix what these are. So if you made your measurements at the solar company, you might find some of that. I put this in here. This is straight out of the book. This is the 7 deadly sins written up in 2008. And here's talking about the 100 bottom quintile team. And this name is kind of a name I just picked up because most people are familiar with it. The 7 deadly sins of early Christianity: lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. Some politicians I can name have them all. Anyway, ineffective team leadership, and that's first in the list. So what I would do is I would take Larissa, this is not exactly what you asked for. I'm going to try and get there, but I thought this was important context for it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Charlie.
So number one, I put this list in front of the team leader and they could point to them and tell me. And number one's ineffective team leadership. And so that's the easiest one. I would ask, are you the problem? And in some but all cases, people knew they were ineffective and they would say so. And I'd say that if this is the case, there's nothing good going to happen for you in this job. Let's get you a different job. And if any question, I'd run an IDA and see what the team says about them. And I found that just speaking the truth with people works. And I'd say, look, you're not going to be successful here. How did this happen? Well, typically I was a technical wizard. I actually don't like management. I don't like working with projects, but I'm so good technically, they promoted me because that's where the promotion track is, and go fix it. Second one is the task is undoable because of grossly inadequate resources. And this would be a case where somebody made a bid for a job and they underbid it so badly it's impossible. What that means is all you're going to do is get beat up forever. So what do you do here? You go to the team leader and say, here's what you need to do. Go make a 4D request to get more money. If you can't get enough money to do the job, just quit. They said, well, we'll lose the contract. I said, yeah, you will. But what you'll gain out of this is you'll gain, a happier life, one that's not toxic for you and your people. And sometimes it's just in the too hard category. And look, this is some work by a guy named David Bearden. Clear evidence underfunding is a root cause of mission failure. People think missions fail because they're too difficult. The 737 MAX is a clear example of underfunding and inadequate schedule. The management asked them to do the impossible. They had a choice of doing it, and now you see the thing just continues. By the way, that door problem is now on all the 737s, the bigger one also. So these are all being taken out of service. Can you imagine the cost impact? United's got 160 of these planes or something aren't grounded again. All this came out of failure to address unfortunate realities. Flawed procurement. Procurement is just the process by which NASA picks contractors. When I've seen people, this is one of the few cases where I think conservatism pays off. There are ways to do this that have been developed over the years, and someone come up with some crazy idea of doing this a different way, do it faster, whatever. Or a project has money that they're afraid they're going to lose unless they spend it quickly. They shortcut this. They get the wrong people doing the wrong work with the wrong incentives. You got to stop and fix that. That could also kill the project, but I've seen it all too often. Here's another one, a larger broken context. I've seen cases where management demanded increasing sales when there were no bid opportunities, or when they had the shuttles terminated and the last 5 launches need teams to be just as dedicated as they've been all along. We went and worked with those teams and taught them how to insulate themselves from the larger social context, kind of like building a greenhouse around them. Engaged in a power struggle with another organization. I've seen this many, many times. When this happens, the weaker party will resort to guerrilla tactics. The same thing we did during the Revolutionary War. The British came with their red uniforms and stood in lines. We got behind the trees and shot them. This will happen in organizations. So you got to fix that. Then people totally temperamentally unsuited by nature of their color. A bunch of blues that join a team that has to shift into orange. And this is even worse when another sin is pushing everyone to be 1D, be a different person. And then finally, a flawed organizational structure. And this is the RAA work. Clear and ambiguous lines of authority are essential. So you can make up your own list. You can modify this for a different industry. But I think the common themes are not hard to do. You've got the ineffective team leader, grossly inadequate funds and time to do it. Someone's picked the wrong subs. The company's failing. You're in a power struggle. People have got the wrong color for the job, and the organizational structure doesn't work. So I think those are not just aerospace things, they're common to every place. So how do you fix this? Well, you work as a consultant. You take off your 4D hat and you can do it, or if you're not comfortable, they can hire a consultant to help them with this, someone who's good at organizational dynamics. So this is why this is so early on. I met a team leader and the guy talked a good story, sounded great. Wanted a workshop. I said, okay. I get in the room with him and it's a disaster. There's nobody learning anything. It's 3 days of wasted time for me and them. And I realized after that, I did a TD after the fact, and they're a bottom quintile team. After I did that once, I never did it again. Don't go work, go do the diagnosis. It's kind of like, you don't do open heart surgery till you do a diagnosis to make sure that's what's going on. So thoughts, comments, questions?
It's all proven by practice, and I would just say, been there, done that, and just really looking back, I'm thinking much more clearly why it happened and what should have I been doing instead of what I've done. So, but that's okay. I'm really happy that I have this experience and knowledge, and
Yep.
it makes my life much more productive. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just loved it. This is the max writ large. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty telling. The only thing that I'm kind of thinking through in my mind is there's a couple that probably don't apply to smaller businesses. A couple of the flawed procurement. I don't know quite how you.
Well, they're buying parts, they're buying solar panels, they're buying cables, they're buying connectors, they're buying staff.
Yeah, that's true.
So, it's how do they recruit? How do they train? All those things that build the workforce.
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of what I was working through in my mind is how do you kind of tweak that for a smaller business? But the rest of them,
I think for a small business, I'd go to how do you staff and train? That's the thing you're doing.
Yep. And the rest of them, I think, apply pretty easily. Although a broader broken context, that could be the business environment potentially, but
yeah, absolutely. So
depending upon.
So the most dramatic example we had was working at Kennedy with the teams that were doing the final preparation of space shuttles for launches. And when I guess Bush administration canceled the shuttle, they've all got 6 months and they're out of work. And where do you get a job if your expertise is launching space shuttles? So they're 6 months away from unemployment. How do you keep their mind focused on doing the job right so you don't kill the astronauts? And this process worked. And they described building a greenhouse over them and were bringing their attention to their job as a matter of professionalism and also who wants dead astronauts on your conscience? I mean, for speaking really bluntly about this.
Yeah.
So they said it worked for them. It's about addressing the unfortunate reality. Yeah, you got a problem. You're going to be out of work, and we can go talk with the center about putting a team together, go find work for you guys doing similar work at contractor plants or someplace else. And in the meantime, trust that they're going to go talk with you about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and keep your mind on your job.
Yeah.
And the same thing, you know, you talked about layoffs in the industry. When layoffs are happening, it's hard to get people to focus on the work.
Yep.
Yeah. In my case, time and time again, 4D saved my life because the worst case scenario, which I really hate when it happens, but when blue really pretends to be orange, this is really drives me completely crazy.
Yeah, and blue does.
And blue does, and it's actually very challenging when you decide that's it, that's enough, this is not going to
so
work.
what blue does is they impose their most recent idea.
Yeah.
Okay, and no matter how wacko it is, they're going to own it and push it.
Exactly. Yeah. And if she or he is blue, it's the color that sticks. You can never be orange. I'm sorry.
The fish can't see the water.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I'm not a quitter, but in one occasion I decided that's too much toxicity for me and I quit.
Yeah, again, I love this expression. It's in the too hard category.
Impossible to really sustain and just really waste of time, basically.
Yep. On your feet. Darinka's ghost is here. So the first thing you've got to do now is you got to acquire the data. And we used to have a very overly sophisticated system to do this that was built by a guy over 12 years and promised he'd always be there. And the minute I couldn't pay him full salary, he left and wouldn't even answer the phone. So Robert. And I should have done more backup people, but every time I tried to do this, of course, it costs money. He'd say, "No, I'm there forever. Don't waste your time on this. No one, I'm there forever. Don't worry." So I had the thing, and it cost about $300 a month to host it on a server, and people were using it occasionally, and most of them weren't paying me like they're supposed to. I built it so that we only get money after we deliver a product, and it wasn't ever. It was kind of a adjunct thing to the work I was doing. And but bigger problem was that when people had some difficulty with it, they'd email me about go fix it. And I'd look at it, and most of the time, I think the problem was something they were doing wrong. And of course, finding that in the complex, I had no diagnostics or anything. So the answer was Galena in Novosibirsk, who became very close with as a client, and personally, they funded to bring me out there to do a workshop. And man, it was, I don't think they have a lot of money, but they just did it right. They had it at the Marriott and had catered meals, and it was just great. So she wanted to become the 4D headquarters for the world, and I kind of liked it. Her English was very good. I liked the people. She built the assessment system from scratch. It worked fine. And then the Ukraine war happened. So there we are. So meanwhile, Gerald was supposed to build a system back before this, and that never happened. And then Hector was going to build a system. In every case, I talk with their software people. They're going to do it. I think what happens is as you get into this thing, the nuances become more complicated. He never finished it. Cindy in China has built a system from scratch that works great, but she's reluctant to go to the work to translate it to English. And my friend in Melbourne has a system. I've never seen or used it, but he's done something. It works. I know that Anne Cochette in Montreal has done something on Google to make this work. I don't know quite what she did. I looked at it a couple of years ago and asked her to send it forward, and she just forgot or something. And then you can also do this with something called SurveyMonkey, which is cheap or free. You can make your own. So all I'm talking about is step one, which is to get the data. And so I decided to make something just out of Word, and the idea is that I'll send this to anybody that wants it, and that you can edit it as you want. I don't even need credit for it. You can look at the examples here, and you can write them more to match the company you're working with. Change this any way you want. Make editorial changes. If you want to make more things, add more things, you can select developer ribbon up here and do that. And then you can delete these instructions, and then you can lock the thing if you want, so no one can ever read it. And so only thing is, if you lock it, you better make sure you got the password. There's no recovery if you lose it, so it's gone forever. So what this does is people would open up this thing on email. One thing I like about this is you can use paper with this if you want. You can hand it out in a room. You could gather everybody in a room. You could do a little briefing on 4D, and you could hand them the piece of paper and they can fill it out. Again, modified. Enter their name. The way this works is if you click and enter this, it'll let you put it in. This is an active document online. Email address, confirm it's correct. And then is it IDA or TDA? See, if you hit these boxes, it modifies them. So, and then here's the same text you saw before. Here's this, and you can then check a box here. And it's dynamic. So you can do this, save it, send it back, do this on paper, put the comments in, you can modify it. That's all it is, same thing all the way through. And again, I would ask you to carefully proofread this, because I tend to have, don't do well reading my own writing, but take a look and see that it's all correct. And so you can use this tool by emailing it out, or you can use it by printing it and having people write on it. So pretty simple. Again, I think if I were going to do this, I'd take a look at SurveyMonkey to do this. It's cheap or free. It'd probably take half a day to figure out how to do it, or whatever. There's some way to do it on Google that Ann found. I never. So this will simply record the data. That's all we're doing here, and then send them all into you. If you're going to do this a lot, what I would do is I'd hire a smart, college freshman or high school student to collate this into numbers. All someone has to do is take each of these boxes and take another spreadsheet or something, and I'd put in the person's name on the spreadsheet so you keep track of it, and I'll show you that in a minute. And give these scores. I'd do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I would don't know. You got to be tricky. Don't score that. But this comments or questions about data collection?
It's pretty straightforward. At least for me, I've been through it a couple times. I think it's the second piece that I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
Yeah, okay. So, but any comments about this? Questions? Everybody understand what we're doing here?
Yeah, it's pretty much straightforward.
I'll say this, most people report that their clients are more reluctant to fill this out and send it back than they are to check boxes on a survey thing. So that's why I mentioned the Survey Monkey, but I just put this out there for anybody that wants it.
Yeah.
So then the next thing is you've got to process the data. And I made an Excel sheet to do this. And again, I ask you, please test it, because I've tested this with my own versions of data, but if you use it, go through it and make sure it actually does what it says, because some of this is really complicated. So take data from that data entry form. I put the person's name in here. You can do that or not, just so I can keep it straight. By the way, these are people that I know or worked in the workshops. Nico's there. Looks like Larissa's there. And this is not anything you ever did. I just made names up for my own purposes. And then there's some more instructions about things you can do. And I put a 4, 3, 2, 1. So put those numbers in here. And then now it starts to make calculations. And so this shows, you can see how these formulas are complicated. So this is averaging across here. And then to sort of make it easier for data check, it's showing number of ones, and I calculate this so you can look across here and say, yep, is that right number? Make sure it's doing it right. Again, see these complicated little formulas? These are, and then I would do the percentile. And again, you can see these are complicated, so I make sure they're right. And so it's doing the math for this thing. And over here, it's showing you, I'm not sure what these things are over here. Let's see what it says. Maybe something I did to help check it. I'm not sure what these things are. Anyway, so then it will automatically come down here and sort it by behavior and give you the average for each behavior. And again, the number of ones, so you can go up here and count manually with your eye and check. Again, these are complicated formulas. You see what they look like. And so now we've got each of the average for each of the behaviors. Now it computes the percentile ranking of each, and it makes this little graph. So now you put all these numbers in here for whatever you're doing. Then you can copy and paste this into a PowerPoint document, and that's a display of the behaviors by percentile. And so if you did this with a team, what I'd probably do is I'd put this in a Word document. You can just copy and paste it. Copy, paste it. And then I'd probably put a circle around reality and say that's what we're going to work on going forward. Just for fun, there's a radar diagram. I don't like it particularly, but you might. So, and then down here, it does this histogram work and shows you the individual responses. And this is the fixed histogram. And you take your average thing and put a little arrow on here and copy and paste this, or copy and paste this into your report, and then put an arrow on here. So what this will generate is, and this is the IDA report. This will not generate every product, but it will show you probably the two most important things: which behaviors are the highest amount, which behavior is most useful, and where the team benchmarks. It'll show you that much stuff. If anyone got really interested in using this a lot, I could try and make more data products, but I thought these were the two that it made. And when I put test data in, it seemed to work okay. So there we are.
So Charlie, if you don't mind, can we just go back through the percentile calculation real quick? So the ones right near the bottom.
Yeah.
So, well, sorry, just up a little bit. I'm not quite sure. I'll look at which row I'm really looking at. It's going up just a little bit more. Yeah, 38 and then 44. I guess 44 is probably the best place to start. So that's 66%. How is that being calculated again?
I've forgotten, but there's the formula.
Got it.
It took the number of threes times 0, these times 25, these times 75, these times 100.
Got it.
And then it summed them and divided them
by 100. Okay.
By the sum.
Okay. So it's basically translating the score to its percentile.
It's taking this set of numbers and getting a percentile rank for it.
Charlie, you did send it to us previously. I apologize. Would it be okay if we'll ask you to send it again?
Yeah, sure. I'll send it out again. There's all this stuff.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I did this a couple of years ago, and frankly, I've forgotten how I did this, but I think it should be right. What I would do is I would play with it and put some dummy data in and see what it gives you. And if it doesn't work, let me know and I'll go back into it. But I think it works. This is, of course, just test data. You could change these and see anything you want. I just put in lots of stuff. Rows of all ones, where did that come out? Columns of all ones, where did that come out? You can experiment with it a little bit and see, make sure it works. Again, these things are, I mean, look at it's not complicated, but there's a lot of things to get wrong in here. So they're messy. You got to make sure everything lines up right. Of course, once you do one, they're the same thing, calculation. So copy and paste. And then these checksum things over here are testing for things. Does it actually work? And I think those numbers calculate a different way, comparing those two numbers. There's probably no way to understand this except to sort of sit down and go through it. And the problem is that you got to understand how these functions work.
Well, if there's like a test group or something like that, but I think that's the only way to really learn, this whole process is to do it with the group.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I would say. I'd say, get the data any way you can.
I will be interested.
And then you can, I put people's names here just because I wanted to make sure when I'm going across entering the data, I'm putting it in the right place. And of course, this is something you'd never share with anybody. Let's see what Brett did here. These numbers are all made up, of course, right? You know this. This is not from any real source.
Right.
So I think,
and
yeah.
Oh, sorry. One real quick question. So like Larissa's got some blanks. Those are the chose not to answer.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Larissa, why'd you do that?
I don't know. I must be in a very special mood that day.
All right. It tries to not give that any weight at all.
Got it.
And you can look here and see 3.3 is about right for these three numbers.
Yeah.
So it worked. I mean,
Yep. Yep.
so I think as you put numbers in and watch how these things will all fill out dynamically as you do it. I think this is the only data entry is right here. Everything else is calculated. So as you enter data, you could watch it and see what it does, and you could put in some fake data. And if it seems to have any difficulty, tell me. But so that's it. Does this make sense?
It does. It's very
It
helpful.
does.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I'll resend all these products to each of you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Charlie.
And
Mhm.
I'm gonna take a look at this. I've got pretty deep spreadsheet background, and just
Okay, if you
kind of
know these spreadsheet, this is nothing complicated here.
no, nothing complicated, but it
Spreadsheets
is
are a miracle,
complex.
you know?
Yeah, they're pretty. It's a pretty neat tool. So I'll try to spend some time.
I'd love it if you'd take a look. And
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
again, you got to know these kind of what this means. This is kind of weird stuff. It looks like gibberish.
Yeah, I love a good COUNTIF.
Okay.
You're essentially giving it a criteria on which things to count.
Yeah, right. If you know the spreadsheet jargon, you're most of the way there. And so there we are. And again, the one thing that's interesting you might note there is that the IDA and TDA benchmarking curves are quite different. And I put these little numbers down here so you can use this as a ruler to put your little arrow in here. It doesn't automatically do the arrow. But when I first saw this, I was surprised. I didn't think the TDA would be that different from an IDA. But it is. And that's the real data. And the best explanation that I have that's kind of intuitive is think about your anniversary dinner. Would you rather have it in a restaurant with your other person with 20 other people in similar tables, or would you rather be next to a table with 40 people? People behave very differently in groups than they do individually. I think you can look at, again, I hate to bring him up, but Donald Trump doing with the crowd, he never acts like that to a person. He acts differently. That's what you're seeing is I think in some level, groups tend to head toward the lowest common denominator of behavior. And that's what we see in these data. It's kind of fun that you can take data and see something like this, but that's how the human condition is. Comments, questions?
I wish that the numbers would help us to understand what to do next. So,
Wait a minute. Yeah, thank you. One more thing I got to show you here.
Sure, great, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, one more really important thing. So this is the what to do next sheet. This is the worksheet I made. And I don't know if people use it much, but I would hand this out beforehand. And as the team leader goes through, I'd have people record something in here. So this is for the full data set. You could probably modify this for your more limited thing. Like there's not going to be a I wouldn't bother with the assessment participation summary. You could make it easy enough. You got the data there, but so I would condense this down, and but this is the process. Anything interesting, and then this data product's not there, so I would delete this one, and then the team leader check a box. Is he going to invite out of family low score? So I'd cut this down, but here's one you'd keep. Which behavior is most limiting? And then say it's behavior one. I put down some suggested things that people could do. So this is kind of like you do the behavior, you brief that behavior, and then some things that people have done. You set aside time for expressing appreciation during staff meetings. Somebody agrees to document annual accomplishments. so you can celebrate them. I've talked about this. What I used to do was have the newest person in the division interview everybody, and it gave them a chance to meet everybody. And usually when they're brand new, they're not busy, overloaded with work yet. They're still figuring out what to do. And document it and put it in a PowerPoint slide. They would all get a pizza lunch or something together and go through it. And this really uplifted everybody. The idea that you could see what you did in the year collectively. It builds teamwork. I mean, the solar power company could certainly do this. Sales, profitability, and the whole bit. Then someone could agree to download the slides and present the module. I think it's about 2 hours. I offer to help with this. And then your own ideas. So I think this is the most important line, because what people are going to do is what they think of themselves. Go on to the next behavior, decide you want to do anything here. Same thing through the 8 behaviors, straightforward stuff. We support each other by and avoiding drama states by refusing to join victims clubs. Everybody want to agree to that? Does someone want to download this module, learn it, and brief it? Fill out the REA worksheet.
I will definitely be interested. Sorry, I do have a bad connection. I've moved, yeah, but I've lost some of what you've said. But any practical exercise or experience or whatever, I'm more than willing to participate. I would like to implement or use this, as I've said many times. Never came to it.
And then there's the plus question. What's working for us? I would have somebody assigned to edit that and post it in the conference room. This is what's working for us. This is uplifting. The Delta question is a really good source of action items. What needs to be fixed? And then I'm personally very fond of servicing the unfortunate realities. You can process those with the context shifting worksheet. Schedule the next TDA for N months from now. Do it now. Do you want a workshop? And then circle actions they want to improve until the next TDA, and then drag this out and say, how did we do? So that's the whole process. There is I think the ROI on this is enormous. We got 2 minutes left. Who wants the final word?
A big thank you, Charlie. Big thank you. If you will send those documents along to us, that would be really great.
Anybody that's listening to this wants these documents, email me, charliepellerin@gmail.com, and I'll send all this stuff out. No problem. I'm also going to copy and paste the 7 deadly sins from the book into another document and send that out. So you have that too.
That's great.
Excellent.
I got everything you need. Just got to go do the work.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you very much.
I got a little chat about the solar stuff.